Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We come to you on this late Saturday night, and for the metropolitan area of New York, it's a sad one, as all the goodwill, all the good feeling, everything that went into this wonderful St. John season came crashing down today in the second round against a talented but beatable Arkansas team that clearly is a team that has talent, which had a lot of injuries this year, started very badly and was given up for dead in the conference, came on strong, still had to bring guys back, still doesn't even have everybody back. But was there today to present an interesting issue, and we knew they would because of the fact that uh, they had the kind of physical talent that could match up with St. John's. But in our wildest dreams, we could not have envisioned St. John's to crash and burn the way they did. And it's going to take a while now to sort this out because this game ended in such an ugly fashion with people criticizing Pitino's coaching, with Lewis, who had such a tremendous season, Big East Player of the Year, all his awards, second team All America, and to have him completely unravel as he did today and find himself benched at the end of the game, and then even how that was handled in the post game press conference, it could not have ended in a worse way. It could not have abruptly, and that's how it was. And that's what happens in the NCAA tournament. Tremendous seasons just end on a dime. It happens. You either cut down the nets or you have that loss. But this was the game, as I mentioned to you last night. This was the game they had to win. This was the opponent they had to beat. After that, if they had lost to a very good Texas Tech team, which got whole, which played without a key performer again today and beat Drake, but if they had lost to them or lost in a regional final to Florida, it could have ended in a very graceful and valiant fashion. It didn't. It ended in a ugly fashion with a lot of second guessing, with a lot of recrimination, with things said about players, with all kinds of stuff. And as we said, everything that could go wrong did. Plus, they had a matchup and an athleticism and a length that was going to give St. John's trouble. Now, we knew all year, we talked about it. What would happen if they got into a second round game, a third round game, and they couldn't make a shot? Well, today, that exactly happened. But not only that, they, for the first time, lacked their tenacity. For the first time, they were looking around, questioning themselves. Plus, they got a very, very shaky whistle. Now, I am not going to make a big deal. The fifth foul on Richmond was a terrible call, okay? But this was a game that was so impossible to officiate. It was played at such a intensity. There was so much hitting going on every play. You can't blame this on the officials for calling fouls. This game was that rough. You knew it was going to be that way because there was an air around this game from the start, from the day that you saw the matchups and said, oh, this could be Calipari and Arkansas against Pitino. We knew that this was a possibility. Now, we didn't know if they'd beat Kansas. I thought they would. They were fortunate to do that. They came up late and made some plays, and Kansas fell apart. They had a vulnerability today that St. John's was not able to extract. They turned the ball over all year. St. John's did not turn them over today. And the two things they had St. John's had one themselves, and that was that they couldn't finish shots, even around the basket, and they couldn't make an outside shot. They also played almost the entire game without the leadership of Kadari Richmond. Rick decided to sit him the entire, for a great lengths in the first half with 2 fouls, and then he wound up fouling out, only playing 16 minutes. The lack of his leadership and his floor direction and him getting him into their offense and making the right play was so evident. Smith gave them a boost for a while, but then he unraveled. Now, he's never been healthy. We know that. And Pitino even noted that after, when he lauded Smith and talked about how much he had given him and how much Richmond had given him and how much Scott, who played hurt and was definitely off his game today, gave them. Now, St. John's had their moments in this game, and they also had their moments when they completely threw this game away. There were two distinct things that Arkansas had that were going to make St. John's vulnerable past their obvious shooting woes, because Arkansas's shooting woes from the perimeter were just as bad. Neither team could make a three. We know that. The numbers in the game were staggering. They really were. Okay? They shot 2 of 19. St. John's shot 2 of 22. That's 10. That's less than 10% for the game for the two teams. They shot 10.5. St. John's shot 9.1 from three. They both made 70% of their foul shots, so that wasn't crippling. And they both shot plenty. Arkansas shot 27. They shot 31. But the two things that Arkansas had, one was the length and the athleticism around the rim that bothered St. John's when Creighton illustrated it with their big man. When Cockburn gave them trouble and changed shots and blocked shots, St. John's was not themselves. But here they continued to try to drive the ball and take the ball right to the front of the rim instead of pulling up for those patented 2-point shots, which they have hit all year, and moving the ball and making the extra pass. That's where not having Richmond on the floor was crippling to this team. Plus, Lewis got so out of sorts and never could recover. And so often this year, there was a time, especially in the second half, where Lewis would go off and would close the game, even after awful first halves. That did not happen today. The other thing that they had, and you saw this at times this year, and I've talked about it on numerous occasions, if you had guards that could dribble penetrate and take the ball to the basket, St. John's was vulnerable to dribble penetration. Villanova exposed them that way. And Arkansas got layups and into the paint all day off dribble penetration. All day. St. John's had to play players they didn't want to put on the floor, and they were getting beat off the dribble. And that broke the intensity of that dynamic St. John's defense. The St. John's effort was there. The Arkansas effort was there. The effort for both teams was there. Arkansas turned it over 9 times. They needed to turn them over 20 times in this kind of game. St. John's got 25 offensive rebounds, but they couldn't make shots. 25 offensive rebounds. Calipari said after the game, there's no more rugged league than the SEC, and they're the best rebounding team, better than any rebounding team in the SEC. That's how good they are. He said they just didn't make shots, and they didn't. But they also couldn't stop Arkansas off the dribble and keep Arkansas from scoring in the paint. There were really 3 crippling moments in this game. Number one, St. John's had the ball in a 4-point lead with 2 minutes left in the first half. They had Amazingly, despite their shooting woes, they had taken a 4-point lead and they had the ball. They needed to close out the first half. They didn't. Arkansas closed it out with a 7-0 run, which should have been 8 because Boogie got fouled when he went to the basket and got knocked down. That should have been an and one. He got plowed on that play. They didn't call it. He got the basket. They went up 7 points. They scored the last 7 and went up 3 at the half. But St. John's has been in that position 1,000 times. So while you were dismayed, at least I was, that they closed the half that badly, I wasn't worried. But Calipari told his team, make them call the first timeout in the second half. That couple of minutes coming out of the gate is so critical. And Arkansas made sure they matched the ferocity of St. John's and equaled it and actually had a cohesiveness and a commitment that St. John's didn't have today. And those guys said they saw it, especially in Lewis's eyes. And Pitino clearly saw it in Lewis's eyes as he was trying to find the key to his star by shaking him up at different times in this game. And it didn't ever click. Now, you can get on him for taking him to the bench in the last 5 minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think he was going to make a difference today because you remember when Zuby went and pleaded with him. He was not in the game, and they were not running their offense because they did not have Richmond's leadership on the floor. And it meant they really were not the same team. Scott was hurt. He was giving you effort. He couldn't knock a shot down. When you look at the numbers that these guys shot today, and a lot of them at point blank range, I mean, it is unbelievable. Lewis went 3 for 17 and 0 for 3 from 3. Scott went 1 for 10 and 1 for 6 from 3. He got 6 offensive rebounds. Richmond, who only played 16 minutes in a game where he would have played 35 to 38 under normal conditions, only had 2 assists, which was enormous. St. John's only had 5 assists in the game. They were not making the first pass, no less the extra pass, and getting the proper shot. Wiltshire, who only played 15 minutes, went 1 for 5 and 0 for 1 from 3. And Smith came in and gave them a lift, but then he too much went with the ball with nowhere to go, turned the ball over a couple of huge times down the stretch, and they came back and had 2 chances to tie the game. Zuby had a point blank layup to tie the game, and I can't knock Zuby's game today. He had 23 points and 12 rebounds. He played his heart out. He played 37 minutes. He played his heart out. He banged and banged and banged. Okay. But he had a point blank shot that would have tied the game. Scott, who is an 84% foul shooter, missed 2 huge free throws when it mattered. They could not get over the hump. And then they put him away. Methodically, they put him away. They had their chances. And for the first time, it didn't click. They weren't together. Lewis was on the bench in Neverland. And you want to get on Pitino? Hey, you don't get to decide when Pitino is your coach and when he's not your coach. Okay? You guys out there who are now going to knock Pitino over a decision to put Lewis on the bench, be quiet. Okay? This guy just built this thing from nothing in 2 years. And now you're going to tell him how to coach the team? You're not. Was it confounding to America and to the announcers and to everybody that this player of the year in All America was on the bench? Yes. But Pitino had tried everything to wake him up. Zuby had tried to wake him up, and I hate to say it, but Lewis had cashed out on this game. He cashed out on this game. He couldn't get started, and this game broke him. And the Arkansas players said after the game they saw it in Lewis's face. Because Calipari had drummed into them that this team is going to grind you and grind you and grind you and pound you until they try to break you. You can't let them break them. And instead, Arkansas broke St. John's. Richmond couldn't stay on the floor. Hey, that fifth foul was an awful call. Lapis did the game. He said it was an awful call. He was dead on. Steratore backed him up. It was a terrible call. But again, this game had so many foul calls. I can't get on the official for blowing the whistle again. They've been blowing the whistle the whole game. He has to keep himself on the floor. He can't get the cheap reach foul in the first part of this game because St. John's had to play parts of the second half. Too many of those players on the floor were playing with their hands in their pockets because they were in foul trouble. So many times this year, they would back off in the first half, and in the second half, they weren't in foul trouble and they could let it rip. And they would devour opponent after opponent after opponent. They couldn't do that today. One, because this opponent, while not having the year that they had, clearly, okay, without any question, okay, knew that they had the ability to stay with St. John's every step of the way. This team had as much physical gifts, more length, as much athleticism, and they haven't had the season. And they weren't the cohesive machine that Pitino had melded St. John's into defensively, but they were talented and they could beat them off the dribble. And they beat them off the dribble all day. And I'm telling you, for me, the biggest factor in the entire game, in a game with a lot of factors, incredibly bad shooting, incredibly bad follow-ups around the basket, missing so many easy baskets, which they have a lot this year, but not to this extent. But the thing that to me was so damning for St. John's today was they did not have Richmond's leadership when they needed it. Richmond was not their best player because he can't shoot. He can't make free throws. He can't make an outside jump shot. But you watch them play wonderful basketball this year and lead, take charge when he needed to take charge. And today he couldn't get started because of foul trouble. And he spent the entire game when they could have maybe broken it open or made a big run. He was on the bench. And down the stretch, when they needed him to pull everything together, he wasn't there. Without him there, Lewis fell apart. Completely fell apart. Didn't play like for Player of the Year. Didn't play like a star. Didn't play like an All-America. And Pitino had seen enough. You want to get on him for not putting Richmond back in? Go ahead. But all of a sudden, you're the coach and he's not. All of a sudden, you know more about coaching the team than Pitino does. You don't. So you rode with him through all the glory, through the Big East regular season, through every big win, through the sold-out Madison Square Garden games, to a Big East championship in the tournament, into the NCAA tournament for the first time in 2 decades, winning the game by 30 in game 1, and now you decided, hey, I know more than Pitino. You don't. Might not agree with something, but so what? You're not coaching the team, he is. And did he get frustrated today with his team? Absolutely. Wouldn't you have? They got 25 offensive rebounds. They couldn't put them back in the basket. They couldn't make an extra pass once. How many times in the huddle do you think he told them, pass the basketball? The head had been cut off. Richmond wasn't there. Lewis was the closer, but Richmond was the rudder. He was the leader, and he was out of the game. And when he went to the bench with 5 fouls, so did all their cohesiveness. So did their ability to make the right play on offense, on defense, to stay together as a group, to be the group they were all year. Instead, they unraveled. Unraveled. They gave effort. They gave effort all the time. And so did Arkansas. This game was a hell of a basketball game. I gotta tell you, it was a hell of a basketball game. It was intense. It was played hard. It had a lot of twists and turns. And I know it's a bitter, bitter, bitter loss. And you don't think him losing to Calipari? Okay. Listen, I know both of them very well. And I know their history very well. And I'm not telling any tales out of school, but let me tell you, they haven't been close in a long time. The one thing neither wanted to do was lose to the other guy. This was an enormous win. And whether you don't like John, you like John, John's always bothered you, whatever, I don't care. You know what? That's fine. That's about personality. Bottom line is he did a hell of a job getting his team into the NCAA tournament, and he did a hell of a job beating Kansas and St. John's. And now at Arkansas, where they didn't even expect to make the NCAA tournament, he already is now the darling in Fayetteville and Little Rock. And Arkansas is going absolutely mad now over being in the Sweet 16 and beating St. John's and Pitino and beating Bill Self in Kansas. So he has now cemented his new stay incredibly. And remember, they ran him out of Kentucky. They did it as gracefully as they could, but they ran him out of Kentucky. And he landed on his feet. And he had a huge, huge win today. And Pitino had a crushing loss. Crushing. This was the one thing that couldn't happen. This was the one thing that would throw an enormous, enormous amount of pain into a joyous season. Like I said, if they had lost the buzzer beater to Texas Tech, they could have lived with it. If they had lost to Florida by 10 in the regional final, they could have lived with it. This one is going to hurt for a long time. And when you add in the way they went down, playing as badly as they did, unraveling the way they did, having their star be exposed the way he was, It's painful. If you're a St. John's fan, you have to accept it. Now, you know this town moves on as quickly as Spike Lee will throw that St. John's jacket in the closet and get out his Yankee jacket for opening day, okay, or his Knicks jacket for the playoffs. Hey, that's how quick this town turns. But there's nothing wrong with that. Fans are consumers. They go where the excitement is. That's what they're supposed to do. It's either that or you have empty seats. You want Spike Lee to be at that game because you want there to be excitement around the game. You want him jumping up and down. He's become like a mascot for New York. So it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Let him show up and be happy. Who cares? People get so hung up on, oh, you weren't there. No one was there. Nobody was there for St. John's. They were terrible for 20 years. Nobody was there. In this town, nobody's there when you stink. Nobody's at Citi Field when the Mets stink. Nobody's at Yankee Stadium when the Yankees stink. I've been at Yankee Stadium for a game when there was 400 people in the building when I was young. And I sat in right field with my brother, God rest his soul, and we collected baseballs with everything we could find to put our baseball in because there was no one else in the lower deck as Thurman Munson was batting left-handed and hitting batting practice home run after home run left-handed into the seats on an October night. It was 500 people there. They're good. There's 45,000 there. We know that. That's the way New York works. There's nothing wrong with front running. If it's no front running, then they don't ever sell a game out. This is an event town. People flock to the story. And St. John's became a story. And now they're not a story anymore. And hopefully this is something that Rick can build on in the years he has left here. In his heart of hearts, did he think this was a championship team? Probably not. Did he think it was a Final Four team? He thought there was a great chance, and so did I. I thought they'd beat up Texas Tech, which hasn't been 100%. I thought they'd beat up Arkansas. I thought they'd turn them over, and they didn't. And Arkansas did better than I thought they did, and I didn't think Boogie was going to play when I made that statement last week about them having an easy game today. I didn't realize he was going to play, and he made a difference. And they were better than I thought they would be. So I was wrong about Arkansas. They were much tougher than I thought they would be. I knew next week was going to be really tough, but they were going to have a chance. They were going to have a chance to beat Texas Tech, and they were going to have a puncher's chance against Florida. And Florida is as good as any team in this tournament, probably right now playing better than anybody in this tournament. Houston had a tough game tonight with Gonzaga, but Gonzaga was really good. That was not going to be an easy game. If you tell Sampson now, he's happy he got Gonzaga in the rearview mirror because he knows they're really good. And Houston moves on. And now it's about Houston and Florida and Duke, et cetera, so on. But fine. And about the Big Ten and the SEC. Okay, fine. And Duke. It's not about St. John's anymore. And when Pitino said today to the reporter, you know why I sat him down. Don't make me say it. I sat him down because he was out of the game mentally, completely. I sat him down because he was 3 for 17 and it wasn't getting better, it was getting worse. He wasn't making any plays out there and he looked lost, and he was frustrated, and Zuby was trying to keep his head in the game, and the other team even knew how out of it he was. So he sat him down. He sat him down a couple times to try and shake him up. He had the assistant coaches in his ear, and he could not get him started. I think one of the big reasons they couldn't get him started was because Richmond wasn't there. Richmond was only on the floor for 16 minutes, and he was the glue. And they would have made the right pass, and he would have gotten into the lane. He would have broken it down and made the pass to Zuby and hit a cutting Lewis and hit the ball and got the ball to the right guys in the right spots. And yeah, foul trouble was in their pocket all day. But so John had his bigs in foul trouble, and he managed that as well as he possibly could. And St. John's had guys in foul trouble too, and that's just the way the game was because it was a brutal game. Tough loss. Great season. Horrible finish. And the weeks to come, that will become less painful, and the glory of the season will settle in. And then you'll hope to build on this and move forward next year. And maybe next year they don't win the Big East, but they have a better NCAA tournament. That's the way it goes. In this thing, as Riley said so aptly, there's winning and there's misery. Today, you got the misery in big, big doses. Now, to tomorrow's games. As I told you last night, the standalone games, unless something stupid was going to happen, were going to be Florida and UConn and Duke. It's always Duke. So the standalone games tomorrow, and this configuration is set up for cable because they want the games at night and they want the games backloaded at night because they have no programming. So CBS takes the early games and then goes to the news and goes to 60 Minutes, and they put the games on at night. Not the best thing because you get too many games at night, but hey, it is what it is. It's backloaded. There's only 2 games played before 5:15. It's just the way it is. In the old days, almost every game would be played. Every game would start before 5:15 because you had to be gone for 60 minutes, or you would go crazy. Connecticut, Florida is at 12. The mighty defending champions, and Danny remains cocky. When he was asked how he felt last night after the win, he said, "Feels normal." Well, if you've won as much as he is, it does feel normal. I think tomorrow is going to feel abnormal because they're going to run into a team that's going to, I think, give them a whooping, and that's Florida. I don't like this matchup at all for UConn. They don't play defense well enough. And even if they get good games out of McNeely and Caravan, they are not going to beat this team tomorrow. And if they don't, they're going to get beat pretty good. They are a 9.5-point underdog, and they deserve to be. And their winning streak comes to an end tomorrow in the tournament, and then there's no Big East teams left. Baylor is a 12.5-point underdog to Duke. They should be. Duke will win, just how many they win by. Illinois, Kentucky. Illinois is healthy, and it looks like they were healthy the other day. They can win this game. This game's a toss-up. Gun to my head, I take Illinois. St. Mary's, Alabama. Defense, offense. Offense wins out in the long run. Alabama's got too many. St. Mary's can't stop all the things Alabama does. Alabama wins. Colorado State, Maryland. Colorado State's tricky. Maryland's got more. I think Maryland wins. Mississippi, Iowa State. Iowa State played well the other day. This game could be tougher than you think because of their injuries. Do not discount the Iowa State injuries when thinking about this game. If they hit their shots, that's one thing. But if they don't, this could be a rough game. New Mexico, Michigan State. New Mexico's got a great guard. He's a wonderful player. Michigan State's got more. I think they win a game. Could be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think Michigan State will edge away. And then Oregon, Arizona. Do not ever discount Dana Altman in this tournament. He will have his team ready to play. Arizona's got more talent. They have Dana, who is one of the really terrific NCAA tournament coaches, and he's a very live underdog coach. So do not be surprised if Oregon wins. That's what you're left with. Today you got rid of a 2, a 3, a 4. No ones yet. Auburn's is alive. Came back on Creighton when Creighton put on a shooting display in the first half. Didn't put on that display in the second half, and Auburn went on to a victory. Were they overly impressive? No, but they don't have to be. They won the game. That's all that matters, and they won at double digits. Um, Houston beats Gonzaga, which is not an easy game. That's an 8-9 game you shouldn't have to play in the second round. If you're Houston, they played the best team anyone will play this weekend by far, and they won the game. Give BYU credit, held on for dear life. Wisconsin had a chance to tie after being down big. Give them credit. Drake ran out of gas against Texas Tech. Purdue, McNeese was awful early against Purdue. So, and Tennessee's got UCLA, as I expected. So, your winners today were Tennessee, Houston, BYU, Auburn, Texas Tech, Michigan over A&M, Arkansas, Purdue. That's where you are, and then today's games. We'll wrap things up tomorrow night. And this week, remember, we got opening day to deal with. We'll preview the Yankees and the Mets extensively on Wednesday before opening day, Thursday. And now we won't have St. John's to talk about Thursday night, and they won't have to worry about San Francisco or anything else. Now they have to worry about next season. Time to put the balls away. I had to say, for basketball coaches, they hate the day where you put the balls away. Well, tomorrow's the day you put the balls away. We'll see you later.